Denelle Dixon from Stellar Development Foundation did an amazing interview with Yahoo Finance. I'm going to share that video with you. So let's take a deep dive, ladies.
The hearing, I think, has been really interesting. I think the Chairwoman Stabenow started the hearing by sort of laying the foundation of what they had initially brought forward with the bill, and as well as the ranking member bringing his perspective in. I mean, we were sitting there in September with Chairman Benham on these issues. We support this type of legislation, particularly filling in this gap. And, we definitely want to see some improvements to it in terms of one of the issues that you just raised around definition of security versus commodity, and making sure that the regulation is clear around that. But all in all,
and that's the big takeaway from all of this. Why and how are we even wasting time deciding enforcement if we don't even have a definition of what it is that we're enforcing? She is on point right here.
When there are gaps, we need to fill them.
Let me ask you the same question, Denelle, that we heard the CFTC chairman asked, which is, if in fact FTX, and we're talking about FTX International, was registered under the CFTC, whether this type of collapse would have happened, whether they would have been allowed to commingle funds with Alameda as is alleged. What do you think?
I mean, the thing that's very frustrating about this is that most of what happened here is just all about really poor management and hubris. It's about the notion that these tried and true controls that we put internally at companies, because we know that they work, just were flouted, they were disregarded. I'm hopeful that regulation and the type of regulation that we're talking about here would have caught that, but it's hard to know because, first of all, we don't know all the ins and outs of it yet. We've only seen what we can see from the bankruptcy filings and also what we've heard Sam say himself publicly. But I think that what's most important here is none of this is a commentary on crypto or blockchain. It really was just about the fact that some people thought that they knew how to do this better and they could disregard everything that we've known for years and years and years about what works internally for companies to be able to protect customer assets.
And that's a big takeaway there as well. It's extremely important to see what companies are taking risk and what money they're using to take that risk, which ends up being your funds.
So I think that's really the most important takeaway here.
But what does this damage to trust actually do for the industry? We did see a lot of people sort of pulling money out of exchanges, going to hard wallets instead, because they were sort of waiting for the dust to settle to really find out which exchanges they could trust. So I wanted to get your take, because SBF called this a risk management problem that got out of hand. Would you agree with that?
Oh, it was absolutely a risk management problem. Internal controls, there's so many issues that we're seeing right now that we know, and I'm a CEO of a company, and I think one of the things I said yesterday in a tweet was that this wasn't a high school bake sale. We needed to actually maintain these controls and put this in perspective. When you get the trust of consumers and you're holding their money in custody, you need to be able to maintain that trust through tried and true controls internally and risk management and having governance, proper governance, all of these things. But what you just pointed out is that there is harm to the industry, even though this wasn't about anything with respect to blockchain, the technology, or crypto.
And that's a big takeaway that I've been trying to show to everyone out there watching these videos. This is definitely a blow to trust in the crypto market. Now, here's the big thing. Crypto will go on. This just sets us back time-wise and confidence-wise, right? We probably lost a good chunk of people in this last FTX disaster. So trust, albeit diminished, is not completely broken. There's still people out there that believe in crypto.
Harm to the industry is the fact that this blew up and many, many consumers are harmed as a result of it. And so that is going to take us a few steps back from a public policy perspective, and frankly, from just the communications perspective. But, we're here to make this better, and we're here to have these conversations. And I love that you're digging into this because it's really important.
Denelle, you yourself have testified on the Hill on these hearings before. And, the argument in hindsight, since we have seen what happened with FTX, is that Sam Bankman-Fried did have a very close relationship with a lot of these lawmakers. The CFTC themselves said they met over the last 14 months 10 times with SBF to discuss the regulatory issue.
That's right. The CFTC met with FTX numerous times and there were no red flags raised. That is shocking, everyone.
His words were that he was really, sort of going at it hard with CFTC. And I wonder if, when you think about the legislation that has been introduced around how to regulate this space, to what extent that is now tainted because of the oversized influence that SBF had on Capitol Hill. Denelle, can you hear us okay?
I now can. Sorry, I lost you for a second. I think I understand, like the notion that your question about like knowing that these meetings happen and to what extent has that actually benefited or harmed the legislation. The legislation that was put together by Chairwoman Stabenow and Ranking Member Bozeman, in addition to co-authors on that legislation, was done so from a principled base. It was looking at their experience with the CFTC and understanding the benefits of the CFTC and what they could do, if properly funded, to be able to take over this spot regulation for the spot market. And that, importantly, is not something that Sam Bankman-Fried made up. And that is, importantly, not something that FTX influenced in terms of that creation of the notion that there's a gap there. So I think that to the extent that there was a lot of influence by FTX and Sam himself, it doesn't actually tarnish this legislation. The fact is there's a gap, and we need to fill that gap. I would love to see the gap filled with definitions around what is a security in this space and what is what remains a commodity, understanding the balance between the SEC and the CFTC. These are things that need to happen because it actually creates regulatory clarity for the industry as a whole. And it actually allows consumers to feel much more protected. So these are all really important, despite the influence of maybe some players that didn't have their hearts and minds in the right place when they went to make these things happen.
So there you have it. Denelle Dixon giving us her thoughts on the whole FTX and crypto mess. She did a really good job there explaining that the biggest problem we have is the definition of commodity and security and getting the CFTC and the SEC lined up. Think about that. Think about how much more confident consumers would feel, businesses, other government officials out there, if they knew we were operating under some good protection, right? If there was good protection for the consumers as well as the businesses. Because think, these politicians, they're getting knocks. They're getting knocks on the door. They're also getting phone calls. Ooh, look, I did old school phone, right? Not cell phone. But they're getting these calls and they're saying, hey, we're your constituents. We're losing money. We're getting screwed. You know how many people probably made phone calls after FTX, Celsius, and all that? Bet you those politicians' phones were ringing off the hook. And politicians will only act when, well, it matters when it comes to votes. So she did a really good job. I mean, she did dodge one part right there. I think you guys know what I'm talking about with that. That had to do with the direct influence of his donations. And she did a really good job dancing around that because, again, you don't want to be pissing in people's backyards, right? She doesn't want to piss on certain politicians out there because, hey, we need support from everyone to get crypto legislation through. We cannot make this a partisan thing. So you have to play smart on both sides of the fence. She did a really good job of that. Let me know in your comments below what you thought of this style of content, a little bit different for me, and what you thought of what Denelle said. Well, in hell, just tell me what you think. Thank you very much for watching. Learn more crypto stuff that's going on right now that matters to you. I'll catch you cool cats later.